Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Too Many Men podcast. We are without our wonderful host, Alison Lucan, today because she has some bigger fish to fry in Seattle, but we will have a special treat from her at the end of the episode. Shayna, how are you?
I'm good. We're gonna power through without our trusty leader who keeps us on track. Like, this will be an adventure, right?
It's always difficult, but guess what? It can be unhinged and fun, and we love unhinged and fun, especially during this round of the playoffs with more goals and lopsided games than ever. But we'll get into that. First of all, let's do my favorite segment. I'm alley-ooping to myself right now. Bit-O news. It's official. The 2023 Stanley Cup playoffs mark just the sixth time in 36 years there will not be any best of seven sweeps through the first two rounds. Shayna, thoughts?
That's fine, except I hate this round, and if round two wants to end like tomorrow, I won't be upset. It is legitimately the worst round that we've seen in a minute. Everything's blowouts back and forth. Nothing's fun and exciting. The only good series is the one that potentially could have been a sweep. But like in round one, I'm thrilled that there were no sweeps. So
It's just kind of interesting how you don't know who is going to show up when. Like the lopsided games go from like, okay, the Devils are going to score 8 goals and then the Hurricanes are going to score 6 goals and it's going to be Jordan Martinook. It's just, we'll get into that, of course. But I just think, what do you think this says about where we're at right now in hockey?
I feel like the league's going to be like, look at the parity. Look at everything we've done. And they're going to find a way to pat themselves on the back for this, because it feels like every time that there's like anything, they find a way to like the NHL's the Maple Leafs in a way, because they make everything about how does the NHL no sweeps affect the Maple Leafs? Well, two ways. One, the Maple Leafs didn't get swept. And two, the NHL makes everything about them that they're like, look at what we've done. We've built a league with so much parity. So I think that's what we're going to hear. But like, I don't know. I think it does say like the competitiveness of the games and all that kind of stuff. You can definitely go with that. But like, we still had a game that went to 5 and the standings are still funky and the playoff format's still wrong. But, you know.
Yeah, I go both ways with this, where like I kind of am excited every night to see what's going to happen because we literally do not know what's going to happen. But at the same time, as especially someone like you who does a lot of analysis, it's hard to get a grip on what is going on. I guess you just have to go back to the 5-on-5 play and just go from there. But it's just kind of crazy that there's no like pre-writing anything. I don't know. I'm like thinking about Hurricanes Eastern Conference final, that game's tonight, that they could clinch. And I'm like, literally, I won't even start writing about anything because you don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. And it feels like no teams are dead just yet, but we'll get into all of that. Let's first talk, before we get into hockey, about the draft lottery, shall we?
Yeah, please. Our favorite thing, the draft lottery.
So not much went right on the broadcast. First of all, there was a little blunder where they announced that the Columbus Blue Jackets had dropped to number 3 and they didn't pull up the card, and then it just went to commercial break. And we have yet to get kind of an explanation for that. I guess it was just a little mistake, but it was just, no offense to Bill Daly, I don't know about you guys, but that was just a very anticlimactic broadcast. He had the Ducks sign up upside down. It was just all a little bit Bush League to me. What did you think?
No, it really did feel, it was very bland. It's very on par with the NHL compared to like other major leagues. Like, it felt very Bush League. It felt very bland. Like, first of all, show us the lottery balls. That's what we're all here for. Who among us doesn't like watching a lottery drawing? 2, if Bill Daly's going to do it, you need to have a fun spin on it. I don't know if they necessarily need like celebrities for it, but like, I don't know. What about like having a former first overall pick like assist? That might not have personality either, but like figure out something. And it just felt awkward. Like, was that recorded and then it was a voiceover by Kevin Weeks on top of it? Or was that live and then it was like simulcast? But then how do you have the blunder? It just like, it's just really not ideal. I don't know. I think everything about it felt really forced and boring and dragged out. And it's something that should be like quick and exciting. And every year I'm like, do I have to sit here and watch it? Like, I don't know. I feel like that's the complete opposite of what the league should want.
Yeah, it's like if they want to hype it up that much and make it into this thing, then they have to make it into a thing.
Yeah.
And we didn't even get into what actually happened yet. Chicago jumped from 3-1.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. They jumped from
Yeah,
3
because
to 1.
Anaheim went to 2 and Columbus should have been
Columbus
2.
Yeah. So they jumped up to get the first overall, and it's going to be Connor fucking Bedard. So that's kind of a big deal. And it's the first time they've had a first overall pick since they jumped up from 5-1 in 2007 with Patrick Kane. So there's a lot to unpack here. Shall we begin?
Yeah. So, okay. I don't love the conspiracy theory, the league is rigged for Chicago crap. I really don't buy that. My issue with it is I don't think Chicago should have had a first overall pick to be in the draw. And some are like, well, why would you drag it out this long? So even though the investigation was going on, I think when they traded their first rounder to Columbus for Seth Jones in that like big trade, like you couldn't suspend picks pending the results of the investigation. But this is the first available pick since. I don't think they should have been able to make it. I think it's a bad look for the league that they, one, have a pick, two, won the draft lottery, because it kind of like amplifies the fact that they have the pick. Does it help that he's going to a big market though, in a way? Yeah, obviously better than Columbus and Anaheim for them, even though I think most of us would have preferred that. But like, what do you think about that? Like, do you think they should have had the pick in the first place?
I agree that they shouldn't have had the pick, and they traded away their pick last year anyway. So they shouldn't have. Maybe, I know they can't do that during an investigation, but it's like, okay, so they didn't even take that pick. So yeah, just suspend this pick.
Yeah.
And especially when it's Connor Bedard, and I know it shouldn't be off of principle like that, but it just stings a little bit more because they're getting rewarded. And I saw reports about the millions of dollars in ticket sales they've already made since in the hours after making the first overall pick. And it was just more than Beach won in the settlement. It's just very...
More than what the NHL taxed them.
Yeah.
Not taxed, but like punished them for the $2 million.
Yeah, 100%. That's actually what I meant. Sorry. But that is just like a slap in the face, and all the takes about, yeah, it's good for the league. And I had a take like that too, because I mean, objectively, the money, it's all about money. And it just is really sad that it is about money and we can't do better as a league. I now think about GM Kyle Davidson. What is he going to do? He's going to have to start the rebuild quick, because there's no doubt that Bedard's going to be the number one center and slot right in and be the best one since McDavid. I just wonder, who is he going to build around him? There's basically no roster, and there's $44 million in cap space. So figure that out right now. Who would you like to see him get?
That's a good question, because like I don't think that the returns on like past trades were as high. Like I think they got more for Kane than they were going to because of like the lack of leverage, and obviously they got nothing back for Taves. But it goes back to like the Hagel trade and the Doc trade. They could have, would have, should have done more, and I feel like that shows now, because they should have like a little bit more of a prospect pool that's like a little more intriguing. But this is like the hardest part of it, right? Because you could go the route, like when the Sabres got Eichel, they tried to speed up the rebuild by signing like players like Okposo and Molson to those huge contracts, because there wasn't elite talent to sign, so they gave it to them. And I think that's super helpful to have like veterans and things like that on your team. But it feels like you can try to accelerate it too much, and then you're in a shitty situation because you gave money to players who don't deserve it because you just tried to force it, or you throw yourself into a situation like the Rangers, honestly, where you speed up the rebuild and then development kind of goes to the side, which it shouldn't, and then your window's short. So I don't know how they manage this. I feel like they need to figure out a way to bring in some like young game breakers, and it's about like their drafting, developing, and player acquisition, like outside of the draft. Like there's still everything to do.
I know. I think obviously Davidson was gifted this, but now it's a double-edged sword because all eyes are going to be on him, and he does less time than he would have, and there's going to be so much speculation on it. So it'll say a lot about him and his young career, what he decides to do next from this.
Yeah, 100%. And also, I feel like we can't forget to, like, when we look at rebuilding teams and like what they're composed of, a lot of times it's more than one top 5 pick. So this is Chicago's first overall pick. If they are a shitty team next year, which is fair to assume they might be, like, they might still get another top 5 pick. And that's par for the course for the rebuild, and not, well, Bedard didn't have a game-breaking season. First of all, if he doesn't have a game-breaking season, it's probably because he has no one around him. But
exactly.
Just like, don't forget that they might still get another 1 or 2 top 5 picks in this before they start turning it around.
Yeah. And one more bit of news, and it's a very, very sad one that we hate. Gabriel Landeskog is going to miss all of next year after missing most of this year he was going to undergo a cartilage transplant in his knee, which sounds absolutely brutal. I know Mark Methot tweeted that that's what happened in his career. He got that surgery and then he was never the same. So it's just absolutely heartbreaking for the Avs and their captain. And he's such an important voice in that leadership role in that room. And I mean, it's a huge reason they didn't end up advancing past the first round, is that he wasn't available. He was still around the room, but it's just not the same. Shayna, do you think he's going to be able to come back? Do you think he's going to try? How does this affect the Avs?
I hope he's able to come back from this, like missing 2 years. And it kind of shows too, like you play through an injury and you don't know the damage it did, because this was something he suffered in the playoffs against the Stars. And I think he played a full year. And now we're seeing like all of this kind of bounce back, which is like really unfortunate. I do hope he can return. But I think I don't want to say plus side, but the only thing that does help the Avs in a sense versus this year is the certainty that he's not going to be back. Because like this past year, they knew they weren't getting a Kadri replacement, and they were like, it's fine because Landeskog should return, and then him with one of like Lehkonen or Nichushkin, and then the other line could have the other disruptor plus Rantanen. Like your top six center winger depth was so fine that you didn't need to worry about center depth. And at the deadline, I think they still thought he was coming back, so they didn't make a move because they're like, well, when he returns, he's in. We don't need to like long-term IR him in anymore, like things like that. Like you act differently. And I wonder if they would have been more aggressive had they known. So now like they know for a fact they either need to add another top six winger to balance out their center depth or legitimately find a center to balance it out. Like having that certainty doesn't hurt them is the only bright side. It helps their plans that now they know.
That's actually a really good point, because obviously they couldn't do anything last year when he went down. So now it's like, okay, well, now we know he's not going to be back. So what are you going to do to fill that hole, even though it's just brutal with his leadership? And you could tell that he has that voice. So I don't know. I wish you the best. And I really hope, as if he's listening to this podcast,
of course,
I really hope he comes
Everyone's
back.
Always
Friend
listening.
of the pod, Gabe. I hope you
Kale's
come back.
going to tell him to listen.
Yes. All right. One more piece of bad news, and it's been a while since we've had the shit list, but we are bringing it back for ESPN's John Anderson, who during the Vegas Edmonton highlight on SportsCenter made a joke about Zach Whitecloud's name, saying it's a great name if you're a toilet paper. Whitecloud is the first Indigenous NHL player from the Sioux Valley Dakota Nation, and it's just... John, there's a follow-up where John said, this is totally on me, and I sincerely apologize to Zach, the Golden Knights, their fans, and everyone else for what I said. And Whitecloud accepted his apology. But I just think there's such an onus on minority players in the NHL to accept these apologies and to just roll with the punches when, first of all, it's not funny. Jokes about people's names are not funny, no matter who they are. And I think we can retire those. I don't know, Shayna, what were your thoughts on this?
No, yeah, you definitely can retire those. It just was like, it was stupid to say. Like, I feel like if you have a platform like ESPN, like, use it properly, and you can try to have fun, but like, don't be insulting or offensive to anyone. I think the part of it that I liked too was that the person that took issue with it was Whitecloud. You know, like a lot of the time it's like there's a media uproar and then everyone like jumps in and then the player has to deal with it. I like that he was just like, it was kind of like a calmer situation where he just like spoke about it, explained himself. He was really well spoken. I liked everything he said. He explained why his name was important, stuff about his culture. And I think we could learn something from it versus just like sometimes the reactions are just like so wild and it blows up a situation. I just like how he handled himself. And again, he shouldn't be the one that has to accept the apology and has to handle the situation with class and grace and all that. He doesn't have to. He can be outraged if he wants to. And it's not that, oh, this shows character. It's just, it shows maturity that clearly others don't have.
Yes. And I loved that he used it as a teaching moment, even though he didn't have to. And it just sucks that he's here. And he said himself, I don't want to be standing here in front of you all. But the fact that instead of brushing it off, it did deeply affect him. And that's okay, because it's his name. And a name means so much in Native American or First Nations heritage, whatever, all of the First Nations, it does mean a lot. And he taught us something about it today. Or today, I don't know, when he did the press conference, it clearly affected him, and the way he was able to convey how it affected him and what his name means was just really, really great. And I just think John Anderson is just another example of, okay, you have to be prepared if you are a broadcaster. And it's just, I know everybody makes fun of ESPN for not knowing hockey, but it was just another instance of, you don't care about hockey if you don't respect kind of the First Nations and Native American culture that is prominent around the league.
Yeah, it's just like, it's professionalism, right? Like, you have to toe that line of knowing how to be funny, how to this, how to that. And like, it just felt like an example of not knowing that at all. And I don't know, like, we always talk like, oh, it's privileged to be in this league. Oh, it's a privilege to be in any position. And I think that we all have to kind of like do the right thing to maintain our positions. And if you make a mistake, it's how you bounce back from it, right? Like, it's how you learn from it. So hopefully he takes something from this and just doesn't make some like asshole-ish remark to a player like he doesn't know anything about. He just heard his name and responded that way.
100%. All right. I think it's finally time to talk about one of the most monumental, how does this affect the Leafs of all time?
Oh my God. They're alive.
They have not died yet, baby.
I like the yet. Yeah. We're not finished yet.
You know what? I don't think there's any way they really come back from this series, but it's time to get into this. They are not dead. They went up. They have a 1 win.
1 win.
Yes, okay, can you explain this? Because I can't speak.
No. Okay. No, so they were down 3-0 to the comeback Cats, who everyone counted out, and they clawed their way back into round 1. And here they are. The fans manifested Florida. Yes, there were some who chanted, "We want Boston," but we all heard it. Everyone wanted Florida. Toronto got them and went down 3-0 in the series. Game 1 was definitively Panthers all the way. Game 2, the Leafs were the better team at times, and the Panthers won. Game 3, they tinkered a bit, and it bit them. And now the Panthers took a 3-0 lead heading back to game 4 in Florida. And Toronto won 2-1 game. Not the most impressive Leafs performance to me. I think it was okay. I think they had a shitty first period and then found their footing in the second and third. It was not game-breaking by any means, but we saw appearances on the score sheet finally from guys like Nylander and Marner, which was so important. And now the series goes back to Toronto, and like there's some intrigue there. Like, can they extend the series? Are they, they're not going to be last year's Panthers, it seems. So what do you think of their chances now?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm believing again against all odds. Unfortunately, it brings me no pleasure to report that I'm starting to believe. I don't think there's any way they come back, but I do want to say, obviously, Mitch Marner with a goal and an assist is huge because the core 4 and everybody has been shut off from the score sheet. I think also these games are getting closer and closer. This is the 3rd straight game in the series decided by 1 goal. And now that the Stars have shown up, maybe that makes it even scarier for the Panthers. Joseph Woll made 24 saves in his first career playoff start, which pretty convincing. It wasn't the best goalie performance I've ever seen in my life, but it wasn't the worst. And I think it wasn't the worst with a confusing situation in net with them right now. I think they're going to win at least 1 more. Maybe they're going to lose in 7. Do you think the juice is done with the Panthers?
No, I think the Panthers still have it. And I'm really curious about what Bobrovsky does from here, because the workload is starting to add up for him. So let's see how he responds. Cause like we've seen it before where he plays the string of games and starts to, decline, but he did have a big break before this when he was sick, and they still have Alex Lyon. And if Alex Lyon came in and made this series, like, I think Leafs fans would implode. So I think that would be really funny. But yeah, like you said, like Woll was good. He was not game breaking, but he had a quality start. That's something. Like 2 quality starts from 2 goalies, and it was all about what happened in front of the net for the most part. So I think that's important, for both sides here. I am a little bit curious about what happens with Nyes, because he might be able to come back. We don't know for sure, but there's a chance he comes back. And it reminds me of Bunting returning from his suspension. They chose not to play him because they won and they didn't want to tinker the lineup. But they had a chance. Like, they knew if they didn't put him in and it burned them, they had another game. They don't now. And so if he were to return, it's probably on Ryan O'Reilly's line. And that line last night, it was Achari, O'Reilly, and Bunting, and they got their ass handed to them by the Kachuk line. They're lucky the score didn't reflect it as much, but like below the surface, the shots, scoring chances, everything, like it really wasn't good. So if you could put Nyes back on that line, they weren't perfect defensively with him, but him and O'Reilly were like really excellent offensively. So you get that scoring depth, I think, that they clearly need. And if they can contain the Kachuk line a little bit better when they have home ice advantage, like that's going to help them. And that's the hard part, because like in game 1 they went with Marner there and it just like swallowed Marner's minutes up because he couldn't create anything. He was playing defense the whole time. So I wonder what they do there. What do you think?
I agree with you. I think the matchup game is huge here, of course. We always talk about that, but I agree. It's with the Kachuk line, it's really everything. But I am just curious to see the Panthers' response, because they haven't really in this round have had to deal with adversity. So I guess, okay, what are you going to do when the other team actually wins a game? And there's just so much noise around this series that I think it will say a lot about how do the Leafs affect the Panthers. I think it will say a lot about this team and their Stanley Cup hopes if they have a big comeback in the next game Friday. So we'll take a look for that. Now around to the West, Edmonton and Vegas are tied up, and the streets are saying, I just saw an article that said the Oilers are now the Cup favorite, which I disagree. They literally tied up a series. Grow up. It's just that they're Canadian and they're not losing. I think this has been an insane, we talk about lopsided, Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid continued their high scoring ways to help Edmonton even the series. The duo currently sits first and second in points in the 2023 Stanley Cup playoffs and became just the 4th pair of teammates since 1990 to hit the 50-point mark across 2 postseasons. Evan Bouchard improved his power play totals in the 2023 Stanley Cup playoffs to 4 goals, 9 assists, and 13 points, tied for 7th most by a defenseman in a single postseason. Is Bouchard getting the McDavid effect where he gets to slot in on the power play with him? Is he his own beast, or is it a secret third thing?
Ooh, that's a good question. You know what? Like he had the power play to start the year and he lost it to Barry. And then when they traded Barry, I feel like everything changed for Bouchard because he has the confidence at even strength. I think Ekholm has balanced out his game so well. What a good addition, because like everyone's forgotten how to play defense in Edmonton except for Ekholm at times this postseason. But I think having the even strength confidence and the power play scoring, getting that opportunity with his game being a little bit more stable has been like really great for him. And he has a great shot, like from the point. That is a bomb that he has. So it's nice to see them getting production from like all different members of that power play unit and it not only going through McDavid and Draisaitl, even though like it primarily does.
What are your thoughts on Evander Kane being a fucking idiot?
I'm over Evander Kane. You know what? If he could score some points and was doing this would be one thing, but he hasn't impressed me on the score sheet. And like, so they split up Draisaitl and McDavid last night, which was like the best thing they could do. And the Draisaitl line went up against Shea Theodore, and Shea Theodore did a pretty good job containing them, like that Vegas unit. And then McDavid was with Hyman and Nugent Hopkins, I think it was, and they crushed their minutes, and it was against Pietrangelo. Kane was with Draisaitl and Yamamoto, I think it was. So it's kind of funny too, because like here it is, Kane was on the stock top line and he was the passenger, and now he's just on Draisaitl's line. He's still the passenger. So not ideal, but you could just see the frustration in his game. Like 2 games ago, you saw it again. Last game, he was so undisciplined. And then in last night's game, that hit to Pietrangelo, which kind of started everything. I think he deserved a penalty, even if just to keep the game settled, because when it didn't get settled, we saw that slash from Pietrangelo, which he has a hearing for. It just feels like when scoring and things don't go his way, he gets undisciplined, and there's a difference between bringing an edge to the series, like someone like Matthew Tkachuk does, right? And he really does walk the line well, and just being an asshole because you're not producing. And it feels like that's what he's doing.
I know. I think it's one of those things where call me when this series ends so I can see maybe he's giving his team some juice, but I kind of doubt it. I think they'd appreciate him more on the score sheet because when he's on with the goal scoring, and he's been off and he's lashing out. But speaking of the Pietrangelo hearing incoming, do you think he's going to get a game? I know McDavid called him out and said, what did he say? Something like this league is a joke if he doesn't get a
Yeah.
game. So
Yeah.
good for Connor McDavid,
Good
like
for
using his
McDavid,
voice.
our friend.
I know, friend of the pod. What do you think about that, Slash?
Yeah, that was uncalled for. I understand him being upset that there wasn't a call on Kane, especially given everything that's gone on this series. But you don't need to do that. There's no way, shape, or form you're doing anything besides being malicious to poor Leon. What did he do to you besides being really good? Like, you're not even doing it back to Kane, which would carry more malice if it was back to Kane because it's more reactionary. But like, you go out of your way. It's not a small slash. You literally bring your stick up and over. It's completely intentional. 100% deserves a suspension. If you did this like in the beginning of the game, he probably would have gotten the game tossed from the game, and then who knows what suspension would have come. It was at the end of the game. Your team is behind. You're frustrated. Like, that's the thing. All the like undisciplined plays we're seeing in this series, it really feels like it's coming at the end of the game when the score is out of reach because there's so many blowouts. And I think that adds to it. You're not trying to light up your team and get them going. You're doing it because you're pissed off. You're doing it because you're reactionary. And that, I think, has to go into it. I'd be truly shocked if he doesn't get a game. I think he probably deserves 2. Do you think the like status of his hearing is going to decide whether Kane keeps his automatic suspension from the instigator?
Oh, no. I think it should be what it is regardless. I don't know. What do you think about that? That's such a unique situation.
It feels like if we know the league the way we do, like it's going to be like a tit for tat thing. Like,
Yes,
we're
exactly.
going to uphold the suspension if Pietrangelo gets 1 or 2 games. I don't think anyone would have a problem being like, all right, well, Kane's keeping his suspension. And then it's like, look, we're not deciding things, but like one shouldn't have to do with the other. If they wanted to give him that like automatic penalty, like, was it that bad that he started a fight? No, but this is the rule and it is reviewable afterwards. And that's not by player safety. So if like they decided, hey, we're not gonna either way, I don't think the answer is wrong. But if you want to keep this series in line, which is of all the round 2s you need to keep in line, it's probably this one. Like, then that's the move, right? Just throw each of them out for a game, try to balance the scales when it shouldn't be the case.
Yeah, you're so right that that's probably what's going to happen, and it shouldn't be the case. And it remains one of my biggest bones to pick with this league. It's like, do what you actually think, not something to even it up. But that's just like literally the existential question of the playoffs for the past 5 years with the way officiating is going. So definitely keep an eye out for that, because that's a unique situation, and it will set a precedent for future situations like that, I guess, if they're ever to appear.
Yeah, right.
I know. Now we're flying back to the East Coast for Carolina, New Jersey, and the Devils are in a 3-1 deficit, despite like all the games. These games are drunk. These games are high, and you never know what to expect. They had an 8-goal game, which their sole win, and then the Hurricanes followed it up with Jordan Martinook flu game. Jordan Martinook has had a hold on this series. I don't know what it is. He has absolutely been on fire with multiple multi-point games, including the most recent we're recording on Thursday. So tonight there will be a Hurricanes game, and we'll see if his hat trick comes up. I don't want to jinx him, but he has been a beast I don't even want to begin to try to explain that. But also, this series is the first series in Stanley Cup playoff history to feature a starting goalie change in each of the first 4 games of the series. So Shayna, I wanted to ask you what you think that says about the series.
It's such a weird series. It's so weird. Like, sure, the edge is that each team has goalie options, but this series, I hate it. I hate this series. I hate
Why?
Because I want close games. I'm not entertained. I'm not enjoying myself. I feel like I have a harder time staying engaged in these blowouts. Like, I want to know. I want to see forecheck versus rush. I want close, tight games battling it out. But I guess with this one, at least, it was interesting that it was close after the first. Then, like, the Devils looked kind of dominant to start. And I'm like, okay, here we go. They're going to tie the series. It's going to be the same as round 1. I do like there was like a change in like the script there. But like with the second period blowing up like that, you had to change goalies. And it's so interesting because you have Ronta was out sick. Kochekov's joined the conversation at times because Freddie Anderson had such a bad game 3. And then on the flip side, you have Akira Schmid, who's brought into round 1 because he's so good against tips and deflections, which you would think would work well against the Canes. That's how they score a ton of goals, and it doesn't. So you have Vanacek come back in, have an okay game 3. He won, but he didn't even, there's been 0 quality starts for the Devils in this series. And now you have more chaos. Like, I don't know if Vanecek's just bad in the playoffs because what we know of him in a limited sample is bad through 2 years. I don't know if it's just the workload. He wasn't used to it this year, and that's it. There was no coming back when he started to trend down the regular season. Like, I legitimately don't know the answer to it, but everything, like, it's so, if the 5-on-5 play was there for the Devils, like it was in game 3, they could make up for the below average goaltending, and they can't the rest of, like, they're not playing well enough to.
I know. It's so true about the goalies too. Like Schmidt was having such a good first round, and now there's
But
so
he
many
wasn't even
questions.
tested as much. That
Yeah,
was
that's
a big
actually
thing.
so true. That's actually a good point. And now the Hurricanes and Jordan Martinook are here to test him. I
Yeah.
think Freddie Anderson might be emerging as Carolina #1 after a strong performance, but like, who the fuck knows? Because they'll probably get blown out tonight. Like, you literally don't know in this series. And I know you don't love that. For some reason, I'm loving it. I think it's just like, maybe it's my ADHD brain. It's kind of like, oh, another goal, another goal, another goal. But I don't know. We'll have to see what happens tonight. Do you think the Hurricanes are going to close it out?
I kind of do. It feels like they don't want to repeat of round 1, where it was like, here's their opportunity. They have the team on the ropes and they don't take advantage. And they have home ice tonight. And I think that's pretty huge for them because we've seen the Jordan Stahl matchup game. If they can contain Jack Hughes, that's a huge step. Even though, like, now Timo Meyer's going. So there's like another challenge you're going to have if you're the Devils, who like have their own lineup decisions to make. And do they want to go 11-7 again? I just feel like the Canes forecheck and the defensive system, the penalty kill, and the forecheck are just so dominant. Like, they're not just getting, and this is the thing, if they were just getting contributions from Aho at this point, right? Like, their bit of star power, like it was Natchez and Aho and they were the only ones clicking, I don't think I'd be as confident. They have combinations. They have contributions from everyone. Voss is scoring. Jordan Stahl's adding, his spin to the series. Jordan Martinook, I knew he was like good and chippy, but like the quality of the shots too are not the goals that you expect from that kind of player, like that grinding depth player. And he has like a great finish on these goals. Like, the fact that it's coming from everywhere, I'm like, you know what? I feel like the Canes have this in the bag.
I'm just happy Jordan Martinook's dad, Mark, shout out Mark, is having a good time. He's wild, and they bring the Alberta to the league, and we love that. Okay. And headed back west, we just kind of said, fuck you guys, we're going to go all around the world and come back. Seattle, Dallas is tied 2-2 headed into tonight, but Alison Lucan and guest star Piper Shaw will offer a preview and recap of that situation. So we're excited to look forward to hearing that, and we love them.
Okay, friends. So we are reporting remotely. Shayna and Sara are tying it down beautifully, crushing it. But I'm here with amazing friend of the pod, Piper Shaw. Piper, how are you?
I'm good. I'm a little tired. How are you?
We're a little tired. We're joining remotely because it's a little chaotic, going back and forth, with one game every other day for the series. So again, Shayna and Sara have been great, but they were kind enough to let us remote in with a bit of a series update.
It's an honor.
We're very tired.
Yeah.
So anyway, here we are, one of the 2 remaining Western series. As we record this, it's Wednesday and Toronto is playing, but no games have been decided. So we know that we don't know what happened in Edmonton, Vegas yet. Shayna and Sara will talk about that. But as far as Seattle and Dallas goes, last night, which was Tuesday, was game 4 of the series, and the Kraken were up 2-1. They had a really strong performance on the score sheet, beating Dallas in game 3. But if you looked at a lot of the underlying numbers, Dallas was pretty strong. Jake Ottinger did get pulled, but he has been exceptional coming back after a loss, and he was. And the Dallas Stars basically come back. They have Joe Pavelski back on the top line where he had been. Max Domi has a 3-point night. Very controversial goaltender interference call. We'll talk about that. But Piper, tell me, what are your vibes about the series right now?
Lots of layers to it. I think something that we've
Much
talked
like
about.
a forecheck.
Yes, just like a forecheck, exactly.
Yes.
An onion or whatever they say about layers, right?
Yes.
Onions
Peel an
layers.
onion. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. I just think that the Kraken can win any game if they get to their
100%.
game. That's been the narrative. That's what we've heard Coach Hack still talking about every day now, and the players. It's just that if they can get to their game, and they can start strong, which that's basically when they win the games, is when they start strong or when they're able to find it right away. So I think going into this next game, it's almost pretty clear right away what kind of Kraken team you might be getting that night. I mean, not to say that things can't change, but I think that's and they keep talking about as well, the will to compete. I don't know if we saw as much of that will, as much of that intensity in the last game as we did in the game before that they had that really decisive win. So,
well, and Dave Hackstall said both after the game and then again today when we talked to him it was about, they were a little slow getting to play and getting to battles. And what is weird to me about the series, and we asked Dave this, but if you're not watching these games, friends, watch these games, because the score sheet is not necessarily accurately reflecting what's happening in these games, because the play underneath isn't really what the score is. They're pretty tightly played games. Were you surprised that Jake Ottinger got pulled? And were you surprised that he played as well as he did in game 4?
I was not surprised that he played as well as he did in game 4. I would say maybe what we saw from him in game 3 was in more of an uncharacteristic night, but to the point that you just made as well, the Kraken scored some good goals. Like, it's not like he was giving up really soft chances. They just were, the Kraken just were being really efficient in their shooting. So it is what it is. I wouldn't say I was surprised that they pulled him though, just because I think in any kind of high pressure game that could happen. And it happened to Philip Grubauer the last game as well for the Kraken. So I don't even know if it's, I wasn't surprised, but I also would not put a bunch of blame on Jake Ottinger for that third game. Just like I wouldn't really put a lot of the blame of the fourth game on Philip Grubauer.
Absolutely. And so Jared McCann did come back. He had some shots. He looked fine for a first game after an upper body injury, after taking a big hit. We don't know where he will start tomorrow in game 5. He did play on the quote unquote fourth line for the Kraken. But we don't know where he will play going into game 5, but he has to shake some rust off. And I think if you come back from an injury like what we think it might be, we don't know. I mean, it's going to take some time to recover from that.
Well, and that's also what Jared said. Jared was very candid. He said that he didn't feel amazing on his first shift. He just needed to shake the rust off, but he felt like by the end of the game, he'd gotten back to his game. But unfortunately for the team by that point, I mean, they had a strong third period, the Kraken did, but just kind of at that point, there wasn't much that he as an individual could have done. But it'll be interesting to see where they put him going forward, especially given the success that Ty Cartier has had with Matty Beniers and Jordan. They all seem to click decently well. So we'll see.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we'll be covering game 5 for you tomorrow. The Piper and Alison experience continues. We did want to talk about one other thing that I know Shayna and Sarah have already covered in Bit O News. And they've talked about it, I'm sure, in all the right ways, but we just wanted to touch on very quickly the Kevin Weeks situation from the draft lottery. And first of all, it's very unfortunate. And again, I'm sure that Shayna and Sarah have talked about this, that the Columbus order was picked. It was also devastating to the Columbus fan base, so that adds on top of it. But as far as we know, what we believe to be true is that Kevin Weeks basically spoiled the pick before it was revealed in terms of his tease going into break before the final 3 picks. And as of right now, nobody has made any comment acknowledging ownership of why that happened. And as people who are on TV, we stand in defense of Kevin Weeks, just so we're clear, because you have to understand, like, people are telling you what to say, and they can even be in your ear telling you what to say real time. And so this was not, as far as we know, and as far as we understand from our experience, this was not Kevin Weeks making a mistake. Someone made a mistake. And in my opinion, just like many other prominent people have had to do when they make a mistake, this is not the end of the world, people. We're not talking about saving lives, but can someone just own up to what the hell happened? And let's stop raking poor Kevin Weeks across the coals.
100%. Also, like, a show like the draft lottery is very different than like a game broadcast as an analyst, where you're like calling things kind of on the fly. This obviously they would have had a rundown for this show, a structure. I'm sure he knew ahead of time where something was supposed to be. They probably had scripts written, put in a prompter, I would imagine. And a prompter in this situation I can't say for sure, but I would imagine they have somebody operating the prompter for him rather than him operating it himself. Again, we don't know that. That's just what I would assume. So if somebody skipped ahead, or if somebody said something in his ear. They even could have been cueing him for something else, or somebody else got messed up and said to move. Like, and the timing of a live show like that too can be chaotic depending on someone might talk for 3 minutes longer than they're supposed to. Next thing you know, you got to cut this or shift this. Like in live TV, it happens. And especially on a show like that, where it's not like it's the first time that these people have ever done one, but it's not like they do a draft lottery every week.
Absolutely.
Like they're not doing this kind of a show all the time. So it's a lot of pressure, but also it's a unique situation that they were in. So yes, we are in defense of Kevin Weeks. And someone should just say what happened. I feel
it's
like
okay,
it's
but just say
okay.
what happened, and like stop the shady shit and stop saying you're not saying shady shit when you are. But this stuff happens, and I think it's important to pull back the curtain and share why things happen, because it's not that hard.
Yeah,
It's just
on a
TV.
teleprompter, there's like literally a button. I've operated teleprompters
stuff
before
can
for
go
people,
wrong.
but there's a button that says like skip ahead. That is so easy to accidentally push.
Or
Also,
if the speed changes or something.
Yeah, or sometimes like a rundown, depending on what kind of software they're using, a TV rundown software can like move ahead itself throughout the progression of the show. Again, I don't know what kind of thing, because sometimes there's like auto cues for things to happen. So there's so much room for error that has nothing to do with Kevin Weeks just like deciding to do this, which I don't think he did.
I'm sure, and when I'm sure he feels horrible. Trust me, like you make one little tiny mistake that probably no one notices, or maybe sometimes people do, and you think about it way more than you should. So
yes,
pro
yes.
Kevin Weeks. That's a big part of the Piper and Alison experience, is like ruminating way too much on things.
Having to practice some self-forgiveness for a small little slip sometimes.
Okay, well, friends, we're gonna go back. We're gonna watch Toronto. That's it for the series recaps. I'm gonna throw it back to Shayna and Sarah. We miss you guys, and I will be back next episode. Maybe we'll get Piper back again sometime soon. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Okay,
hello, goodbye,
bye. And until we talk again, do something good to make sure hockey's for everyone. We love you. Bye. Back to Sarah and Shayna.
Back to Sarah and Shayna.
She's the pro. Bye, guys.
Shall we do Fuck, Marry, Kill? Yes. Okay, we're going to do Fuck, Marry, Kill. This is the Ted Lindsay Award for, what is it? Most outstanding player. Do the players vote on this? Yes. Okay, I was correct.
Yeah, it's MVP as voted on by their peers, I think.
Yes. Wow, we got it right. Okay, so the 3 finalists have been announced: Erik Karlsson, Connor McDavid, and David Pastrnak. Shayna, fuck, marry, kill.
Okay, I'm gonna kill Pastrnak. It's just a process of elimination. We love him. I'm sorry. I don't mean to do this to you. I'm going to fuck Connor McDavid because he's like the hot option, right? Like he is if you're like looking across the bar and you're like, that's the hottest guy in the room, like that's the right option. That's the right pick. Do I want to commit to that? No, because I think it's like the boring option, because he's been so amazing. He's going to win so many awards as it is. And that's great and wonderful. But like everybody knows he's the best. So I'm not like jumping at the edge of my seat for that right now. So let's just leave that a fuck, because I want to marry Erik Karlsson. The thing with Karlsson is like he had such an amazing season, and there's been so much discourse about it because the award he's up for, the Norris, there's the conversation of should he be up for it based on what he brings defensively. And that's like a whole nother can of worms. But like, let's forget all of that. The most valuable person to his team is Erik Karlsson. The difference when he's on the ice versus when he's on the bench is huge. He's been absolutely amazing. What he's done, I like that the players are like how the Heart always has that conversation too. Should they be a playoff team? And there's always that discourse. And the players are like, we don't give a fuck. It doesn't matter.
Literally.
Like, it's fine. So I like that they're kind of pushing back on that too. Like, it doesn't, he was a San Jose Sharks. He's the reason they were competitive. Even after Meyer left, they were like interesting, and some, they weren't competitive, but you know what I mean? Like, they were in some games because of him. He drove that team. It was so amazing. I feel like we have to appreciate that season. So I am all about that. I'll marry him.
All right. Yeah. I'll say I'm marrying Connor McDavid because he keeps outdoing himself and had another just unreal season. And I think as much as I don't want it, well, not really, like I'm happy for him, whatever, but I want other stars to emerge. He's just leagues above everybody else. So I'm going to marry him. I'm going to fuck Erik Karlsson because he was literally dragged his team through any win that they did end up winning. It was so fun to watch his resurgence. And it was hilarious that he was just kind of chilling. Like he didn't want to get traded. He was like, I'm just hanging out here. Like I'm making a lot of money. I'm living in California. I'm good. I'm all set over here. And I'm going to kill Pasta. I mean, love him, but there were so many great players on that team that contributed to that historic season. And it's just like the inverse of the Carlson situation where he was like the only good player on the team. Well, not really, but like the only one that was making an impact. So Pasternak, love ya, but we're going to kill ya this one time. All right, that wraps up our podcast today. We hope it wasn't a complete disaster. We're nice girls. We try hard and we love the game. And we hope you had fun with us today. Love you.
Bye.